everything is so replaceable today in the mindsets of buyers, right? They don't really not hooked into things in the way they were. So if you're not building the relationships, if you're not adding value, you're just setting yourself up as another option. They'll switch because you haven't built a relationship, because there's nothing to hold you there.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think at the end of the day, what they want is an experience, and they want an experience that was like, okay, that was an experience worth having. Hello, prosperity seeker, and welcome to another episode of The Prosperity Approach. I'm your host, Allyson Chavez, and thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode. I sure appreciate it. And I am so excited to introduce you to a special guest speaker that we have on today's episode. But before I bring him on, just a quick reminder, if you're listening to the audio version of this episode, be sure that you're following the podcast on your favorite app. And if you're watching this on YouTube right now, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you'll be in the know and in the loop every time we release a new episode. So I am really excited to introduce you today to John Golden. He is amazing. And I was like, I want to have you on my podcast. My audience needs to know you, John. So let me tell you why you want to know John. He is the Amazon best-selling author of Winning the Battle for Sales, Lessons on Closing Every Deal from the World's Greatest Military Victories, and Social Upheaval, How to Win at Social Selling. A globally acknowledged sales and marketing thought leader, speaker, and strategist, he has conducted over 1,000 video interviews of thought leaders for Sales Pop online sales magazine, and has a podcast channel on iTunes with over 800 audio interviews. And as somebody who is in the low 100s of podcast episodes, I am so impressed by that. He is the CSMO at Pipeliner CRM. And in his spare time, John is an avid martial artist. So this is a guy that you want to have in your back pocket to protect you. And also you don't want to, aggravate him in a dark alley. So John, thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, listen, thank you very much for having me, for that wonderful introduction. I'm delighted to be here.
Now, I know, first of all, people are going to be like, that accent is amazing. So you got to tell us where you originate from.
Yes, I'm originally from Dublin, Ireland, and I'm 20, coming up on 25 years in the States. I came during the dot-com era to Silicon Valley, and I came for 2 years, and you see how my plans go.
Right. I love it. My husband and I were in Ireland last year and love the country, love the people. You guys are just absolutely amazing. So I'm so glad you're here. So, okay. So women in business, we need to know sales. We need to know marketing. Otherwise, we don't have a business. We just have a very expensive hobby. And this is true whether you're a man or whether you're a woman. Yep. But I really wanted to have this conversation about you because you actually go about sales from a different way than what most people are taught. But before we dive into that, what have you seen has changed about sales since the pandemic?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that have changed, but there was something that was, I think, changing kind of pre-pandemic, but kind of got accelerated. And that's people, I think, started to get tired of technology being rather than being an enabler, being in the way and pushing people further and further apart. And so I think during the pandemic, as we know, people started to realize that, there's actually other people in the world. I can actually speak to people. It's good. It's actually good to interact with people. And there's a real craving, I think, for authenticity, for relationship, for really being human to human, and then using technology to enable that, but really elevating the relationship part. And I think relationships, as we know, have always been important in sales. But I think they're even more critical now because people crave that. They want to work with people again. They want to trust people. They want to know that you care. So I think that's the biggest change. It's almost like it's a back to the future thing. We've returned. It's kind of what was old fashioned is now back in vogue again, because let's face it, we're social animals at the end of the day. And if we're going to buy something from somebody, especially if it's if it's a B2B sale, even in a B2C, we want to have a relationship. And I think that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. And to your point as well, I mean, not only do we crave that authenticity and that transparency and that human interaction, I think that we demand it more now than we ever have before. And I think partly because we were so isolated for so long and we didn't realize how important that connection was and how important it is to us. And then also just, fallout from people in businesses that don't have integrity and a bait and switch and really like the audiences and the consumers as a whole, we're so much more sophisticated now than we were. I mean, I think even pre-pandemic. And so it's kind of like really, will you just have a conversation with me? And true confessions here, for a very long time, I was afraid of sales, and I have perfectionist programming in me. And so it was like, I got to get the script down. And what actually did is like put this barrier between me and that other person, when it really is just like, will you just talk to me like a person? And let's see if you solve my problem, or let's see if I can solve your problem. Does it make sense for us to work together? Here is what it is. I mean, we make sales like such this huge beast, and it really is just, it's about relationship, it's about connection, and it's about like, can I solve your problem? Do you want me to solve your problem?
Yeah.
It gets to be that easy.
It is that easy. And the way we look at sales is, yes, and you're 100% correct. A lot of people are afraid of sales. A lot of people don't want to get into sales. A lot of people, especially entrepreneurs and a lot of your audience, it's probably not the reason they started their business was to be in sales, right?
Right.
But they find themselves in sales and they're like, oh, I don't want to be a salesperson, because salesperson they're all icky and horrible and they do all this stuff. But the reality is you got to reorient, and it's all mindset. You got to reorient your thinking and saying, no, salespeople are servants and they're conduits, right? If you have an issue that I can solve, that my product or service, that is a wonderful thing for me to do, because I am helping you, I'm serving you. And I think when you start to reorient your thinking, and we also say, look at the world today with all the conflict and war and stuff in the world, we say like salespeople are also, they're peacekeepers in many ways, because they are the conduits for trade, and you can't trade and have with people and build relationships if you're bombing them at the same time. It just doesn't work, right?
Right. Right.
Try that one out.
Yeah.
And so I think it's such a noble profession that we have to reorient the attitude to it, where people are going, no, I'm proud to be a salesperson because what I do is I help people. Simple as.
Yeah. And really, when you make it at the end of the day about the other person and the solution that you're bringing to them, rather than the dollars that you're going to make, when it's not about the money, but the money gets to be a wonderful blessing for you. Yes. It's so important that you have that value trade so that everybody's, on the same page and we're in that same kind of energy. But people can feel it when you're just a dollar sign, or somebody's just desperate for your business. And it's a real repelling kind of an experience that people have, because then it's like, this is about you now, and it's not about me. Yeah. And can I actually trust you to really see me and be able to serve me in the way that I need? But I really appreciate you talking about like this mindset shift that we must have around sales. It's so important. And I remember when somebody told me that sales is service, like that is the greatest service that you can give when you've got the right intention and the right, energy behind it. If you've got something that can solve somebody's problem, I really believe it's your sacred obligation to let them know, hey, there's a solution here. It might be with me.
No, 100%. Absolutely. And I think the other thing is you have to ask yourself the why. And I think this is another really important thing, is ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing. What is the purpose, right? If you've started a business, if you're an entrepreneur or you're a salesperson, just ask yourself, what's my purpose? Because not enough people ask themselves that question. And your purpose and the why is going to see you through the hard times, because you're going to go, okay, I know why I'm doing this. I know I have to go through this. This is, it's difficult. You're in a very, the world is noisy and very crowded and stuff. So you're probably going to get a lot of rejection. You're going to have to overcome a lot of obstacles. But if you don't have a fundamental purpose of why you're doing what you're doing, then it's going to fall apart very quickly. Then you're going to become very disheartened. And the other part is, you can't be authentic if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. And I hear this all the time, and people are out there saying like, oh, I'll teach you how to be more authentic. And I'm like, I don't think you can. You either authenticity has to come from within, right? But so I think that purpose piece is really, really important. And that's why I would say to your audience, particularly those who are starting out or, the entrepreneurs, everything takes longer than we want. Everything is a little harder than we want it to be. So make sure you have that strong idea of your purpose and why you're doing it, because that's what's going to carry you through.
Yeah. And let the purpose lead and let the vision lead, because you said something really fun. You said you're probably going to get rejected. Oh, we guarantee there's going to be a lot of rejection. Like that's just part of the name of the game. You're going to get so many more no's than you get yeses. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of all of that. But sales and marketing, this is a skill. This is a muscle that you have to build. And if it's just, you got to know why you're building the muscle. And when the vision is bigger than you are and the purpose is bigger than you are, then you're willing to go through the pain of learning that new skill and the learning curve of learning that new skill. And also have a whole ton of fun in the process as well. And then you'll get those surprise yeses. I remember getting the yeses and being like, really? Yeah. Why?
and I think for your audience as well, as you're saying, there's a lot of them are women. I think this is a fantastic time, to be honest, for women, because some of the things that women that comes naturally to some women, that empathy, that authenticity, wanting to build, relationships, all of that. That's all coming. That's all what people want today. So you're kind of in a great position. It's maybe some of us, it's maybe some on the male side need to learn some of those skills or relearn some of those skills. But it is a wonderful time, because that's the thing is, let's face it, you want to be excited by the person you're talking to. You want to trust them. You want to feel a bond with them. You want to feel like, okay, I'm making the right decision because I really trust this person and this person seems real to me. And I think in a world of so much fakery, I mean, we to be honest, we look at AI tools all the time just to stay up on things. And the amount of things you can do today that's not real is frightening. And therefore, the more that happens, I think the more people are going to crave, as I said, the real human element. And I think that's where there's a lot of advantages if you embrace that now and say, actually, my time has come, rather than I have to kind of fight to get in. Say, no, I've got the right set of skills for the right time.
Yes. I 100% agree with that. What are buyers and partners looking for when they engage with a seller?
Yeah, I mean, again, as you said, like to just flip it around. I mean, when you engage with the seller today, number one is, here's an interesting thing, right? Somebody told me recently there's a couple of surveys that have been done around people and buyers and just even generally people in organizations. And the biggest thing that crops up is the desire to be seen, heard, and understood. Right? Seen, heard, and understood. As simple as that. So what buyers are looking for is they're looking to be seen, heard, and understood. They want to know that you understand their business issues. They want to know that you actually listen to them, and that you understood them, and then that you can help them. But you're never going to get to the help phase if you don't go through the listening phase, right? And this is where still today we talk about active listening, because in many ways it's getting harder and harder for people, because we live in a crazy culture where these things are dinging us all the time and our attention span, and we're all scattered all over the place. And it's very tempting. And when you're doing a lot of virtual selling, maybe it's very tempting to start to wander off and not listen properly to the other person. And if you're not really actively listening, it comes across very quickly, and then you're dead in the water.
Yes. And I think also I had a business coach many years ago who was all about like relationships, like sales are about relationships. And when you go into a call with an agenda, it actually pulls you out of the conversation. If your agenda is to sell that person, you can't actively listen, because what you're doing is you're trying to think 2 sentences ahead of whatever objection might come up. And what can I say to nullify this objection? And it like totally takes you out. But if your intention is just to serve and to connect, then you can be present in the conversation. Then you can let your intuition guide you in that conversation. And then suddenly, like when I learned that, and I thought, oh, Oh, so it's not about the script and it's not about getting the words right. It really is the energy that I'm in and the intention that I'm in. So this allows me to be like, I don't know where this conversation is going to go. Let's be curious and let's find out together. And then it's really easy to be able to say to somebody, I actually don't think you're a great fit. I think somebody else might be a better fit. Or like, okay, you're a great fit. Do I need to walk you through the fear now? Is this something that you want? And that was like that active listening to just see where the conversation is going to go, allows you to be authentic. It allows you to serve at a higher level.
Yeah. And just think of how you feel, just generally how you feel when somebody, it doesn't have to be a sales interaction, just any interaction, when the other person asks you a question, listens to your answer, and then asks you a clarifying question, and then later on comes back and validates to say, like, I just want to be sure I understood what you said. Can you imagine that in your life? And you'd be like, oh my God, this is the greatest person ever. And it's the same in sales, is because we want, as I said, we want to be seen, heard, and understood. And how can we be understood if you're not listening and you're not delving and you're not following up with, questions, going deeper, and then validating that you're sure that you're understanding the other person. And from a buyer's point of view or partner's point of view, that's a wonderful feeling when you go, these people get me, they hear me, they understand me, and I can have a dialogue.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. When you were like, even not in sales, I think, gosh, when I've asked my husband a question and he's on the phone, playing on his phone, and I got to ask it a couple of times because he's not listening. And when the tables are reversed, for sure, he's asked me questions before and I'm not actively listening. And then I, get caught so many times when I'm answering the wrong question, or I'm like, where were we going again? Yeah.
And as a disclaimer, I would have to say in my personal life, I probably don't always practice what I preach, as my wife would probably attest to.
What, John? You mean you're human too?
Exactly. Yeah.
Where we get to be transparent as well and be like, sometimes I fall down on this for sure in my interpersonal relationships.
Yeah, but it is such an important thing. And I think the other thing sometimes with salespeople, and I think this is a really critical one, is they fear silence. Yes. We're always taught to fill the gap, right?
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, like, if I ask you a question and you don't answer immediately, and I jump in and try and clarify the question or answer it, I've just stopped you from thinking, because maybe I've got to be comfortable enough to give you a moment to actually digest it and not feel like I have to fill every gap with words. So I think that's the other discipline too, is sometimes ask questions and give the person space to think before they answer, rather than go, oh, there's silence. Silence is bad. I need to fill it.
I'm losing them.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're really not. I love that point.
Yeah. So that's another, I think, really important part of it too, is just, is starting to be comfortable with, as I said, with relationship building, and just being with two-way conversations and active listening, and just building trust the way you would want to build it, because we all, as I said, and the enthusiasm, and I think the other thing too is the enthusiasm part is so critical. I keep telling this story. About a year or two ago, I had to get the air conditioning units replaced, right? Not a very exciting thing, right? Air conditioning units, I don't know how they work. And so reached out to a couple of companies, and then they were all kind of a bit blah. But this one company, the sales guy shows up, and boy, did he love air conditioning and air conditioning units. He was and he got me. I got all into them too. And he was great. And he was explaining everything. And he was saying, oh, you don't need this for this house, and here's how I would do, like the upstairs one smaller, because blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh yeah. By the time he left, I was actually feeling really good about the whole experience. And I was actually, when they installed them, I'm looking at the units going, yeah, this is pretty cool. Even though, but it's air conditioning units. It was all because part of it was because the guy loved what he did and was an expert and could bring something as inanimate and uninteresting as an air conditioning unit to life.
I love that, and I think he had a really great mindset about the value that he was going to add to your life. And also, like, it at the end of the day, it didn't matter to him whether like on one point, it probably did matter to him because he wanted to make the sale, but it was more important that it was a good fit for you. And like, here's your options and here's what I would suggest. And I love this and that and the other. And, and then you end up like
And we ended up having to replace a heater later, and same people. So there you go. So they got a extra business out of it too, yeah, because of that.
Yep.
And I think that's the other part too. And okay, that's one example, but even in online and technology sales and all of that kind of thing, or if you're online, everything is so replaceable today in the mindsets of buyers, right? They don't really go, not hooked into things in the way they were. So if you're not building the relationships, if you're not adding value, you're just setting yourself up as another option. And maybe tomorrow the product you're selling is $1 cheaper on some other site. People will go there, or the subscription to your services, a new one comes out that sounds cool. They'll switch because you haven't built a relationship, because there's nothing to hold you there.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think at the end of the day, what they want is an experience, and they want an experience that was like, okay, that was an experience worth having.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Because you're right. Like, there is so much noise, and there are so many similar things, whether it's coaching, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, like whatever that is, how do you differentiate yourself from, like, they talk about the blue ocean and the red ocean, is the experience that you give the people while they're with you, whether it's in a one-on-one call or whether it's like whatever it is. What's the experience that you want to cultivate with this other person? And what do you want them to walk away with, whether they buy from you or not? When you let go of all of that, and it's just about the experience that you're going to foster for this person, and they can buy in or not. If they choose not to, what you've literally done is opened up space for the right person to drop in very quickly.
Exactly. And the other thing too is, if that's fine if you're one person, but if you're more than one person, then you have to make sure that the customer and the buyer experience is as positive at every interaction, from the moment they find you, engage with the salesperson, to whatever happens afterwards. If there's if anything, there's any weak links in that chain, that's what people, human nature again, that's what we default to. It's like, I always give the example again of flying home from Ireland one time, planes on time, everything's fantastic, flight smooth, all of this, blah, blah, blah. We get to LAX, and then the bags are delayed, and there's no announcement, there's no thing. And eventually, like after about 45 minutes, they say, oh, the bags are delayed, they're coming off. But in that moment, when somebody asks you, how was your flight? You say, terrible, even though it wasn't. Everything about it was great except that one piece. And that's the piece we default to. And that's why you have to have what you just described has to happen at every touch point.
Yes, that's so important. So I know some people are thinking, all right, well, what do I do? Like, how do I develop this mindset? Because what you're talking about is being the best version of you and making sure that their whole journey with you and your team or whoever you're involved with is a positive one. So how do you develop a winning mindset and be the best version of you that will then attract others to want to engage with and also work with you?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things, and this is something everybody could start doing tomorrow morning, is pay attention. When you start your day, pay attention to your inputs, right? So if it's very tempting, wake up in the morning, grab your phone, check what your news site of choice. And the thing is, today news is not designed to inform, it's designed to provoke. And it doesn't matter, provoke emotions. And it doesn't matter where you sit on the spectrum, you'll find a news that will do that for you. Same with social media. Your comparison culture, maybe maybe yesterday was a hard day, and you wake up and you see somebody you used to know standing in front of a Ferrari, right? And you go, they're having such a great life, I suck. So, and it turns out that anyway, ultimately it wasn't their Ferrari. But the point being is, just think about your mindset now, your brain. All you've done is input, provocative news or comparison things. And now you're already set up for the day, not feeling great about yourself. So I think you have to really pay attention to how you start your day. Get rid of all that. Look for positivity, even silence. I mean, you don't have to meditate, a lot of people do, but just be aware of everything you do from the moment you wake up is going to impact your day. So be very, very conscious of that. The second point, as we mentioned earlier, is look on your day as you're searching for people to help. And if you find people who don't need your help, that's fine too, because as you said earlier, you've now removed them. And so your focus is back on the people. So, and remind yourself, you're looking for people to help. And I think the other part is also, again, make sure your purpose is there, and maybe you have it written down, maybe you have it stuck over the wall, and remind yourself when the going gets rough, why you're doing it. So these things are really, really, really important. with your mindset. And then it's like, get out of your own head a little bit, as we say, and start focusing on the other person, right? Because oftentimes, we get so consumed in ourselves, and we're doing a sales call because we want to sell something to you, as opposed to, well, here's Allyson I'm meeting for the first time. This would be really interesting. I really want to learn about her and her business and what's going on. That's a completely different approach. And then hopefully, when I learn that, hopefully we're a good fit. And if not, then it'll be great to have met Allyson, and maybe in the future she'll refer somebody to me because we had a good experience. But I think that's the way. You just have to, and you have to be intentional. I think that's the other part. And this is hard, I know, in the world that we live in today, but be intentional, because if you're not 100% engaged in what you're doing, then you're shortchanging yourself. You're shortchanging the person who you're communicating with. So we live in because here's the other thing, Allyson, people say all the time, well, I'm busier than I've ever been. I'm busier than I've ever been in my career. And I always go, well, are you? Or are you more distracted than you've ever been in your life? Because there's a big difference. Because I guarantee you, if you did one of those old-fashioned time and motion studies where somebody stood with a clipboard behind you, timing everything you're doing, you might be surprised at the amount of time that you spend just being distracted. Like, oh, look, something popped up from my favorite sports team, or, oh, look, a news thing popped up. Oh, look, on Instagram. Oh, panda videos. Yeah, they're interesting. Which
right.
It's my latest addiction, unfortunately. Is panda videos on Instagram. But you know what I mean? It's like, you have to be intentional, because this isn't going to happen by osmosis. I mean, you have to be very intentional and deliberate what you're doing. You have to decide your inputs in the morning, to just choose your attitude to the day, choose what you're going to focus on. And I'm a big believer in focus. I don't believe in this multitasking stuff. So be focused, be intentional, and start your day. Be careful of the inputs. That's what I would say. Be careful what you put into your brain in the day. It's like, would you get up? I mean, you wouldn't advise somebody to get up in the morning and like eat ice cream and cake, right? You'd say, okay, it's probably not the best thing. Probably not good for you. Probably not really going to set you up for the day. Well, you got to look at social media and some other things in the same way as like, yeah, they're nice, but they're cookies. You can have them later.
Yes. And I appreciate that.
Earn them.
Exactly. Let them be a reward later on in the day. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, inputs absolutely determine your output. And we live in like this world that's like flipped, where it's just like do more and just like push and pound and all of the things. And I really appreciate what you said, that news is not meant to inform, it's meant to provoke. And dang, I'm like, oh, I fell into that trap again. Shoot, you're right. But now, since you said that, I'm going to remember that and be like, do I want to be provoked tonight? Do I want to be provoked? I don't ever start my day in the news. Usually it's the end of the day, which doesn't help my inputs to sleep well either. And so like, I'm calling myself out here, but it really is. It's the input, it's the intentionality. It's because the inputs will determine the outputs. And if you go at your day with like, I'm less than, I'm not enough, or anything, that's going to translate in the conversations you have, whether they're sales conversations or like anything that you're doing. That energy is going to be translated and transferred as well. And we're so powerful. We're such powerful beings to be able to create the reality we desire and live life on our terms. And with a simple shift of the inputs, it will change everything.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. It'll change everything, and it just make you feel good about yourself. And then when you do have time, here's another thing: if you do have time during the day, and we all need breaks, and that is, rather than spend your time maybe watching YouTube videos or whatever, is actually go sit outside, go take a walk, go sit in a different room, and be with yourself, be in your own head, because we're not encouraged to be in our own heads these days, right? We're always encouraged to be on a device or somewhere else, but spend a little time with your own thoughts, and you'll be amazed how much that can also impact you when you start to go, oh, now can you start to uncover who you really are again? And that's where the authenticity is. So I would always encourage, even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes, doesn't matter. You don't have to, I'm not saying sit around thinking about yourself all the time. That would be a little indulgent. But I'm saying like, it's good again, is just as it's good to get out of our own head, sometimes it's good to get into our own heads for a little bit and just be with yourself, be with yourself and shut out the noisy world.
I agree. You'll find out so much about yourself. You'll find gaps that need to be closed. You'll find things about you that are worth celebrating and cultivating even more and developing even more. And it's time well spent. time well spent when you're being with yourself.
Yeah.
John, this has been so amazing. So I knew my audience would love you. I knew we would have such a great conversation, and I know they're going to want more of you. So you have a couple of things for us. Tell us where people can find you and connect with you. And then you have this awesome freebie for us too. So tell us about that, if you will.
Yeah. So best way of finding me is just LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find, John Golden. And do check out salespop.net. And also pipelinersales.com for the CRM. And then we're giving away an ebook. I think it's the best version of you.
Yes.
Your brand. Yes,
yep.
Exactly. So kind of what we talked about today. Very simple, short ebook that I put together based on a lot of conversations I had with other people too. So these aren't things I make up myself. This is things that there's a little bit from me and there's a lot from a lot of other people too. So it's a really, really useful resource. So, and it will help you start to uncover the best version of you.
I love it. And that link is in the show notes. So make sure that you pick that up. And I know Pipeliner has like a free trial, a 14-day free trial. So check that out as well. And John, thank you so much for your authenticity. This has been such a refreshing, wonderful conversation. So thank you for showing up as you, and here you are, and all of your glory and all of your flaws and all of your humanness and all of your magnificent and your brilliance. So thank you.
Well, thank you. My only thing I would say is I'm jealous. Your flowers are so much nicer than my plants, I have to say. They're so much more colorful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A dear friend gave me those flowers and I love them so much. So thank you. And to all of you watching or listening, thank you again for being part of this episode. And until next time, remember, prosperity becomes you.